The shot rang out like a whip crack, echoing through the twisted corridors of the derelict freighter. Lieutenant Logan Zane hit the deck hard, gasping as pain tore through his side like fire. His hand shot to his torso, already wet and sticky. He pressed down hard, teeth clenched, boots scraping against the metal floor as he dragged himself behind a bulkhead. "Logan?" Someone yelled through the comms, a mix of static and panic. "I'm hit," Logan growled, left side below the ribs. "Not clean." Through his visor he could see flashing alerts, suit integrity compromised, vital signs unstable. He blinked away the red haze clouding his vision. A burst of plasma fire scorched overhead, followed by the high-pitched whine of retreating enemies. The corridor fell into a tense, ringing silence. Seconds later, a pair of heavy steps approached. Logan angled his head and saw the tall, spindly frame of Dranex, the ship's alien medic, crouch beside him. Dranex's 3 eyes scanned the wound rapidly, his pale fingers already probing around the entry point. Logan hissed, "Careful, still attached to that part." Dranex ignored the humor. "Your liver has been bisected. Internal bleeding is catastrophic. You will not survive without immediate surgical intervention, perhaps not even then." "Can you stop the bleeding?" "No, not with the field kit. Your biology is inefficient." Logan grunted and reached for the medkit on his belt. "Then tape it." There was a pause. "Excuse me." Dranex tilted his head. "Just tape it. Patch the suit, stop the bleeding, and I'll walk it off." "Lieutenant, the projectile severed major blood vessels. Your hemoglobin levels are plummeting. You will go unconscious in less than 10 minutes. Logan locked eyes with him. "That's 9 minutes too many to argue. Tape." "It." Dranex hesitated, then activated the emergency sealant foam. It hissed as it expanded, patching the suit breach before he wrapped a pressure band around Logan's torso. The pain was nauseating, but Logan kept breathing through it. "You are likely experiencing delusions. It is not uncommon in terminal trauma," Dranex said, applying the final wrap. Logan coughed. "Yeah, I'm delusional enough to think we still have a mission." Dranex gently helped him upright. "You should not be moving. Not moving means dying." "I'll take the pain." They began the slow trek back to the shuttle, Logan leaning heavily on the wall, leaving a faint smear of blood behind every few steps. He didn't speak, focusing all his energy on staying upright. Dranex stayed close, checking vitals, muttering calculations in his native tongue. By the time they reached the docking bay, Logan's vision was tunneling. A fresh wave of dizziness hit as the ramp lowered and 2 more crewmates, Jax and Sergeant Till, rushed out to help. Dranex waved them off. "Do not move him unnecessarily. His blood pressure is unstable." Logan collapsed onto the stretcher. "You said I had 10 minutes. "That was 21 minutes ago," Dranex replied, sounding more confused than impressed. Back aboard the cruiser Valiant, Logan was rushed to medbay. Dranex took over the surgical suite, assisted by 2 nursing techs and a human trauma specialist, Dr. Tessa Lauren. She barely glanced at Dranex. "What the hell happened?" "Severe abdominal trauma. I believe the liver is destroyed completely." Tessa snapped on gloves. "We'll see. Let's not bury him while he's still yelling at us." They worked for hours. Logan drifted in and out, catching brief images, light panels, faces in masks, the cold pressure of surgical foam, and the searing pain when his body didn't agree with synthetic clotting agents. When he woke fully, it was 3 days later. The ceiling above him was unfamiliar white, domed, humming gently. A soft hiss of oxygen filtered through a nasal cannula. He blinked, then realized he couldn't move without pain spiking through his gut. A voice to his right said, "You should be unconscious." Dranex stood beside the bed, a data slate in one hand. His skin was an odd shade of grayish blue, deeper than usual. Logan rasped, "You always open with bedside charm. You were clinically dead for 27 seconds. Statistically, you should not be responding to stimuli yet." Logan coughed dryly. "Guess I'm not big on statistics." He winced as he shifted, immediately regretting it. Every inch of his abdomen felt like it had been run over by an armored transport. Dranex set the slate down. The surgery was extensive. You lost over 50% of your blood volume. Your liver is now partially synthetic. You will require months of rehabilitation and dietary modifications. How long until I can walk? You should not even be speaking yet. Logan exhaled slowly. So. Not today. No, he lay there in silence for a while, staring at the ceiling. The hum of monitors filled the space. Eventually, he turned his head to Dranex. You thought I was dead. I was correct, you were. But I'm not. Dranex tilted his head again. Correct. Logan smiled faintly. Next time, maybe don't argue with me about tape. Dranex didn't respond. The recovery was long and frustrating. For the first week, Logan couldn't sit up without assistance. Every movement pulled at the surgical mesh in his abdomen. His appetite was gone, and even swallowing water made his stomach rebel. Tessa visited daily, adjusting meds and pushing protein-rich broths that tasted like glue. You need to eat, she'd say. You're not healing on sarcasm alone. By week 3, he could stand with help. His legs were weak, muscles atrophied from inactivity. Physical therapy started slow, 10 steps, then 20. The pain was constant, a dull roar under his ribs. He walked hunched, clutching his side. Dranex observed most sessions silently. Occasionally, he took notes. Once he asked, "Why do you persist in walking when it causes such distress?" Logan grunted as he completed a circuit around the medbay. Because lying down didn't save me either. Dranex tilted his head again. Most species would avoid pain. Most species haven't had to chase down insurgents on foot with a busted ankle in a sandstorm. The alien looked baffled. By the second month, Logan could walk unassisted. He wasn't mission ready, but he could move like a man again. He spent time on the observation deck, watching stars drift past. Tessa joined him sometimes. You were lucky, she said during one visit. I was stubborn. She didn't argue. Dranex finally approached him with a new report. Your recovery is ahead of projections. The synthetic liver is integrating. You may return to limited duty. Logan raised an eyebrow. You're giving me medical clearance. After telling me I was dead, Dranex looked at him evenly. Your biology is illogical. I have adjusted my expectations. What? You're saying humans are unpredictable? I am saying you are personally irrational. Logan laughed, then winced. Fair. Later that week, the Valiant picked up a distress signal from a research station on the moon of Chiral Roman 4. The crew was understaffed, and with Logan partially cleared, he volunteered. Tessa cornered him before departure. You're not ready for combat. It's recon. No enemy contact expected. You said that last time. This time, I'm not planning to get shot. She handed him a pack of emergency sealant. Just in case, Logan grinned. Still believe in tape? No, but I believe in you. The shuttle touched down on Chiral Roman 4 with a soft thud. Logan stepped off, feeling the ground under his boots again. His side still ached, but it was bearable. The research station was empty, lights flickering, systems offline. He moved carefully, weapon drawn, checking each room. In the control chamber, he found signs of struggle-scattered papers, a cracked monitor, a smear of dried blood. Then the motion sensor beeped. A shape emerged from the shadows, tall, armored, not friendly. Logan ducked as plasma fire lanced past his head. He returned fire, hitting the attacker in the leg. The figure collapsed with a howl. Logan moved in, adrenaline numbing the pain in his side. He secured the hostel and radioed for evac. Back on the Valiant, Dranex examined him again. No new injuries, he said, slightly surprised. Logan nodded. Told you, no getting shot this time. You are still healing. I'm still alive. Dranex studied him for a long moment. I do not understand how you survived, not just the wound, the choices, the refusal to accept death. Logan leaned back on the cot. That's the thing about humans. We don't always go by the book. You did not go by any book. You ignored every biological law I know. Guess you'll have to write a new chapter. Dranex blinked slowly. Perhaps I will title it just Tape It and he'll be fine. Logan chuckled. Now you're getting it. The cafeteria on Deck 4 wasn't particularly busy at this hour. A few off-duty engineers picked at rehydrated curry, and two Zalari biologists hunched over something in a glass jar that pulsed faintly. Logan sat at the far corner table, hunched forward with both hands wrapped around a ceramic mug. The drink inside was bitter, dark, and nearly scalding just the way he liked it. His abdomen throbbed beneath the compression vest, but he'd learned to ignore that particular drumbeat. Across from him, Dranex stood silently, eyes flicking between the untouched protein wafer on Logan's tray and the steam curling from his mug. You are consuming a stimulant instead of nutrients. Correct. You were advised to prioritize protein. I was also advised not to get shot. Let's not pretend I'm great with instructions. Dranex finally sat. His knees bent awkwardly, long limbs folding like a mantis preparing for a nap. You appear to be operating at 58% baseline strength, yet you have resumed combat readiness drills. Keyword being resumed. Not excelled at. You should still be in recovery. I am. I'm just recovering faster if I make my muscles remember they have a job. Dranex exhaled through his spiracles, a sound halfway between a sigh and a bubble bursting. Human pain thresholds are inconsistent. You push beyond them without regard for long-term consequences. Logan took another sip and winced slightly. I'll deal with tomorrow's problems tomorrow. You may be cultivating chronic adhesions around your synthetic graft, I'm aware. You are not modifying your behavior to prevent them. Nope. Dranex blinked once slow, deliberate. This is not resilience. It is pathological stubbornness. You say tomato, I say stop analyzing me like a case study. They sat in silence for a while. Across the room, one of the engineers dropped a fork and didn't bother picking it up. The jar on the biologist's table emitted a squeal, and one of them threw a napkin over it. Dranex finally spoke again. Your self-repair capability exceeds my expectations. However, your systemic inflammation markers remain elevated. I've been sleeping 3 hours at a time and waking up drenched in cold sweat. That'll do it. You should report that. I just did. Dranex narrowed his middle eye. You should submit it through official logs. I'll write something up if I can do it without falling asleep mid-sentence. He stood slowly, placing the mug down with the careful touch of someone who didn't trust his grip. The ache in his side flared again, sharper this time. He paused, one hand braced on the table. Dranex rose too, unblinking. You are in discomfort. Yeah, well, I'm used to it. You should not be. Logan straightened. And yet, here I am. Later that day, he sat in the small diagnostics bay on Deck 2. The lights were dimmed and the air smelled faintly of ozone and disinfectant. Dranex moved around the room with practiced efficiency. A scanner hovered over Logan's torso, humming as it passed back and forth. Hold your breath, Dranex said. Logan inhaled and stayed still. The scanner bleeped, and Dranex moved to the console. There is structural tension around the graft site. Scar tissue is forming across the anterior wall. Is that bad? It will reduce mobility if allowed to anchor around adjacent musculature. So we cut it before it grabs anything. That is not ideal. Recurrence is likely unless you maintain consistent therapeutic motion. I've been walking laps around the hangar. Poorly, Logan grunted. Walking's walking. You are listing to one side and overcompensating with your right leg. That is not walking. That is limping with bravado. Logan gave a short laugh. That's new, never been accused of bravado before. You are the embodiment of it. Dranex adjusted the screen and projected the scan onto the wall. Tinted overlays showed the graft, the healing tissue, the concerning tendrils of new scar growth. It looked like a web trying to strangle a circuit board. You have two options, Dranex said. We can perform a minor revision under local anesthesia, or you can commit to a structured regimen of targeted movement and rest. Logan didn't answer right away. He stared at the image on the wall and flexed his fingers, as if trying to will the pain into his hand instead. What kind of movement? Isometric holds, gradual torso rotation, core stabilization. Sounds like a fancy way of saying planks. Yes, I hate planks, they are effective. Fine, schedule me. Dranex tapped a few commands into the console, the terminal chirped its approval. You will begin tomorrow at 6 hours past ship midnight. Logan raised an eyebrow. That's early. You do not sleep. Fair enough. By the next afternoon, Logan found himself in the rehabilitation chamber, bare feet planted on a padded floor mat, arms crossed, and a very unimpressed instructor named Tev staring at him. Tev was a Yarithi, a species with gelatinous limbs and unsettlingly calm eyes. His voice was slow and liquid, like syrup being poured too carefully. You must engage your transverse abdominal layer. Logan squinted. My what now? The internal corset. It stabilizes your spine. I don't think mine's shown up for roll call. Then we shall remind it. The session lasted 40 minutes. By the end, Logan was dripping sweat, trembling, and more sore than he'd been since the injury. His arms ached from supporting his body during a series of controlled side planks, and his core felt like it had been quietly replaced with gravel. As he lay flat on the mat, catching his breath, Tev hovered above him. You have potential for accelerated improvement. Is that your polite way of saying not completely hopeless? You are approximately 12% less dysfunctional than projected. Logan grinned up at the ceiling. I'll take it. The next day he returned, and the day after that. After a week, the tremors in his abdomen began to fade. He could hold positions longer, rotate without wincing, and climb stairs without leaning on the rail. Dranex reviewed his new scans and nodded once. Acceptable progress. That was almost a compliment. Statistical improvement is not praise, still sounded like one. Dranex ignored him. By the second week, Logan was cleared to rejoin short-range missions non-combat, strictly observational. He accompanied a small team to a derelict satellite orbiting the gas giant Miroth. The satellite had gone dark after a solar flare. The team's job was to retrieve any salvageable data cores. As they floated through the satellite's corridor, Logan moved with more caution than usual. Every twist of his torso still sent a ripple of warning through the graft. He kept one hand near the emergency sealant on his belt, though he hoped not to need it. Kova, a 4-armed Falari technician, peered into a junction box. Data lines are fused. We'll need to cut in manually. Could take an hour. Logan nodded, scanning the hallway. I'll keep watch. Kova glanced at him. You were the one who got torn open last month, right? Do I have a sign on my back? Dranex made a whole presentation about it in the medbay lounge. Of course he did. Called it unexpected resilience in sub-optimal biomechanics. Logan blinked. Wow. Flattering. He added a slide about the tape. Oh, come on, had annotations. Logan leaned back against the wall and sighed. I'm never living that down, am I? Nope. Kova grinned, then turned back to the junction box. The mission went smoothly. No gunfire, no alarms, no injuries. Just the quiet hum of tools and the distant groan of a failing hull. Back aboard the Valiant, Logan disembarked and made his way to the diagnostics bay. Dranex was already waiting, as if he'd tracked his return. Vitals stable. No strain indicators. Scar migration has slowed. Logan sat on the edge of the exam table, feeling better too. Dranex examined him with one handheld scanner, then stepped back. You have exceeded recovery benchmarks by 26%. You're welcome. Dranex didn't respond immediately. Then, you are the only patient I have encountered who increases compliance after being declared terminal. Logan tilted his head. Maybe because you declared me terminal. That is not standard motivational practice. Well, it worked. Dranex closed the scanner. You are irrational. And inconvenient. Still alive, though. Dranex's eyes narrowed. Temporarily? Logan stood, stretching slowly. Aren't we all? He left the diagnostics bay with a slight limp, but his stride was stronger than it had been in weeks. And behind him, Dranex watched not with confusion this time, but with something closer to curiosity. You're limping again. Logan didn't respond right away. He kept his pace steady down the corridor, jaw tight, boots thudding softly against the floor. Dranex, trailing just behind him, adjusted his gait to match. "I'm walking," Logan said. "That's the part we care about. You are compensating through your lower thoracic region. That is not sustainable." Logan stopped in front of the airlock and leaned against the frame with one hand. "Neither is standing here with you listing my faults like a disappointed parent. You are not my offspring. Could have fooled me." Dranex tilted his head, either confused or just ignoring the sarcasm. Logan pressed a button on the panel beside him. The airlock hissed open with a rush of decompressed gas. "Why are you insisting on joining this inspection rotation?" Dranex asked. "Because sitting still for another day will make me homicidal. You could observe from the ship. I could also knit." "Doesn't mean I will." Dranex didn't move as Logan stepped inside. The medic's fingers twitched against the rail. "Your pain readings are elevated. You've said that already." "I have not. You didn't need to." Dranex stared for a moment, then stepped back and sealed the hatch. Logan exhaled and leaned his head against the cool metal of the inner door. The shuttle ride to the outpost was uneventful. The transport pilot, a quiet Arvelin named Rixt, didn't ask questions. The crew consisted of Logan, one human geologist, and two Sarathi engineers with iridescent scales that shifted color with mood. They barely acknowledged Logan, which suited him fine. The outpost had been offline for 8 days after a minor landslide disrupted its power feeds. The atmosphere was breathable, gravity slightly lower than Earth norm. Logan led the way through the cracked perimeter fence, stepping over a collapsed support beam with a quiet grunt. "You're not cleared for climbing," said one of the Sarathi without looking up from his scanner. "I'm not climbing, I'm stepping. You used your arms to lift your weight over an obstacle, that is climbing. Then congratulations, you've witnessed history." They reached the central control module. The air inside was stale but habitable. Logan unlatched his helmet and took a slow breath. Dust coated every surface. One of the overhead lights flickered weakly. The geologist, a lean woman named Varia, pulled out a small toolkit and knelt beside a junction box. "We'll need at least 2 hours to reroute the power. Probably longer if the relay's fried." Logan nodded and sat on the edge of a desk, easing himself down carefully. His abdomen gave a sharp tug as he bent forward. "You good?" Varia asked without looking up. "Define good, not bleeding." "Then yeah, I'm good." Outside, the wind picked up. A faint whistle threaded through the gaps in the structure. The two Sarathi moved to the exterior panel, speaking in quiet clicks. Logan watched them through a grime-streaked window, then glanced down at his hands. His fingers trembled slightly. He clenched them into fists. "Pain's bad today?" Varia asked, still fiddling with a fiber cable. "It's not just pain, it's like a tightness, like there's a belt inside me cinching tighter every time I move." Varia gave a low whistle. "Sounds like adhesions." "That's what Dranex keeps saying. Did you do anything to make it worse?" "Just the usual, standing, breathing, thinking about stairs." Varia chuckled and looked up. "You know they can go in and laser that stuff out, right?" "Yeah." "They also said it'll come back unless I stretch daily and avoid overexertion." "And you've done neither of those things." Logan didn't answer. Varia went back to work. "You could have just stayed on the ship." "I know." "Then why didn't you?" He didn't answer that either. 3 hours later, the outpost's lights flickered to life. The engineers rejoined them, both covered in dust and looking mildly irritated. "There is a fissure under the north foundation," one of them said. "If it expands, the structure will collapse." "Noted," Logan replied. "We'll log it and send maintenance." They packed up and headed back to the shuttle. Logan moved slower than before, and more than once he had to stop and rest against a wall. No one commented. Back on the Valiant, he bypassed medbay and went straight to his quarters. His shirt clung to him with cold sweat. He peeled it off and dropped it on the floor. The mirror above the sink showed a pale, drawn face, eyes shadowed, lips pressed in a thin line. He lifted the compression vest away from his stomach. The skin was mottled with faint red lines. A small bulge pressed out on the left, just above the graft site. He pressed his fingers against it. The pain was sharp and immediate. He sat on the edge of his bunk and leaned forward, breathing slowly. His hand trembled as he reached for the intercom. Dranex arrived 12 minutes later. "You should have reported this earlier. I thought it would ease up. You were incorrect." Logan didn't argue. Dranex ran a portable scanner over his abdomen, face unreadable. "You have a partial herniation. The scar tissue has pulled the mesh away from the abdominal wall. Is it going to rupture? Not immediately, but it will worsen with movement. What's the fix? Surgical revision, under sedation. How long would I be down? 5 days minimum. No exertion for 10. Logan closed his eyes and leaned back. "Fine, schedule it." Dranex paused. "I expected resistance. You're not the only one adjusting expectations." The surgery was performed that evening. Dranex worked with Tessa Lauren, both efficient, silent. The procedure lasted just under 2 hours. The herniated tissue was repositioned, the mesh re-anchored, and the scar adhesions excised. Logan came out of sedation groggy but lucid. "You will remain horizontal for 8 hours, Dranex said, checking the monitors. "After that, limited mobility with assistance." "Got it." "Your prior efforts were not wasted," Dranex added. "The muscle tone you developed prevented further complications." Logan smiled faintly. "So I was right to push through. You were fortunate." "Same thing," Dranex didn't respond. The next morning, Logan woke with a dull ache instead of the sharp stabbing he was used to. He sat up slowly, testing the new configuration. It was sore but stable. Dranex entered without knocking. "You are upright. That is acceptable. Pain's manageable." "Good." "You will begin assisted walking tomorrow." Logan nodded. "Thanks." Dranex hesitated. "You have refused gratitude in the past." "I've had time to think." "I see." Logan lay back, eyes half-lidded. "You ever revise one of your reports?" "I do not make errors." "I mean after you learn something new," Dranex considered. "Occasionally." "Then maybe you should add an addendum." "To what?" "Unexpected resilience in sub-optimal biomechanics." Dranex blinked. "What would you suggest?" Logan closed his eyes. "Adaptation isn't a glitch, it's the feature." Dranex stood silently for a moment, then reached into his coat and pulled out a data slate. He tapped a few commands. "Noted." Logan drifted back into sleep with a faint smile. Dranex remained a moment longer, then left. Outside, the Valiant cruised through deep space, lights steady, engines humming. The ship, like its crew, moved forward with only minor scars.